Arise! Arise, riders of Theoden! Spears shall be shaken! Shields shall be splintered! A sword day! A red day! And the sun rises!
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
This is Cheap Seat Reviews.
Yeah, this movie definitely did take its cinematic Viagra.
Pippin, leave it alone.
Yeah, but Sam had some tail to chase.
Well, just have Gollum bite it off. Hello, and thank you for listening to Cheap Seat Reviews, the podcast that explores the Hollywood film industry for the greater good.
The leg pain.
Did you say leg pain?
The leg pain.
Oh, is that the
which
thing
is
that...
Sindarin for greater good.
Yeah, that's right. Good. I'm glad you caught that on Twitter.
Thank you, Green Shirt Podcast, for submitting that to us.
Yeah, it was Cameron.
Yeah, I have the leg pain. Yeah, so it hurts in the left one a lot.
Oh, please do more of that. That was great.
But that is because I sit on the toilet too long, I think.
You get the tingly thing.
You get a blood clot, you'll die.
Yeah. Should get a squatty potty. My son got a squatty potty for Christmas.
Yeah, the squatty potty.
Yeah. But it's cool because his uncle used his Cricut and cut out a bunch of Mandalorian stickers and put it all over it.
Yeah, I wondered how people kind of church up their squatty potties. Because you walk into someone's bathroom that you don't know, and you see one, you kind of get freaked out. Especially if you don't have one in your own house.
Yeah, and this one literally does say, "This is the way."
Oh, lovely.
Okay, they win. That's a winner.
That's
right there.
my brother-in-law. Yeah. Oh my goodness! Wait, that was a voice. Who was that?
They always scare me because there was one time I was at a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get into the bathroom, and the door was kind of stuck. Well, I thought it was stuck, but apparently it was locked, but not locked quite enough. So when I forced open the door, there was a worker squatting on the potty with his feet on the bowl itself.
Oh,
stirrups.
So I was like, "Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God!" So then I left.
Okay.
And in shame.
I mean, the fact that you forced open the door of the bathroom.
That wasn't a red flag.
That should have been.
I swear, it felt like it should have opened.
Well, there's also a little bit of onus on the guy too. When you tried the door, he should have been like, "Hey, there's someone in here," because it's not like you can look under and see his feet dangling, which they clearly weren't. This is a weird place to go at the start of this episode. My gosh, I hadn't even introed what movie we're doing or anything like that.
This is good as any.
Oh my gosh, this is great. This is episode 383. And tonight,
sponsored by Squatty Potty.
Yeah, this episode is brought to you in part by Squatty Potty. This is the way. No, that's not right. Tonight we're talking about Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. That's right, gentlemen. We have made it to the finale. It is time to toss the ring into the fires of Mount Doom and do that thing. I am Sean Allred. Excuse me. And joining me tonight is Andrew. Never insult a man with nothing to lose and a dagger, Jimison.
Hi.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's good. That reference only makes sense if you watch the extended cut. So.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
We will.
Yeah. It's part of my 5-word review.
Oh, really?
But I'll save it.
Things. Okay.
I'm teasing it so you'll come back and listen later.
Is that
Yeah.
Are we worried that people are going to get to 7 minutes into our episode and decide to turn it off?
You're not worried about that?
Well,
if you want to hear Andrew's answer, skip to 3 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah. Hey,
around the 22nd mark of that tick.
Hey, 5 minutes or 2 hours, a download's a download. I'm just teasing. Of course, I want everybody to listen to the whole thing. Sam.
Yes.
Tolkien invented teleconferencing 100 years ago with the Palantir Vector.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Can I set you on fire now?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Why not?
I'm going to set you on fire.
And then I'm going to run
I would not feel bad.
about
just so
setting
you
me
know.
on fire.
Yeah, I mean, you're alive or dead, but either way, I'll set you on fire.
Well, if you do set me on fire, I'm going to make sure I run 400 yards away and jump off in the most dramatic fashion possible. Like, he would have died long before he reached that thing.
Gosh, yeah.
I'm just saying. But it was a cool shot, so that's fine. And making his return, the return of the guest to the podcast is Travis. Hey, what's on the dinner menu? More grilled elephant? Okay. From the Wait You Haven't Seen podcast.
Well, grilled elephant and small cherry tomatoes that I'm going to only bite in half and then let half of it dribble down my chin.
Sure.
The man, he must have had teeth problems.
He had to.
That's the only reason that you would dribble.
No. He forgot to take his Invisalign out.
That's what it is. Yes,
Yeah.
that would do it.
He couldn't-
That would do it.
yeah,
He couldn't feel what he was biting into.
Yeah.
Have you ever been more, I wouldn't say disgusted, but like, I mean, as far as a meal scene where someone's eating, it was the most aggressive and offensive and just like the worst ever. You know,
I have seen movies where a scene of somebody eating is more disturbing than that, but not many, and usually it's because they're like, they're eating Frank or something. Like they're not just eating a tomato and some chicken.
Yeah, like that one where oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'll say I honestly think that scene won this movie the Oscar.
Oh,
I honestly think that's the scene that did it, that put it over the top.
with Pippin singing the song that he made up.
Yeah.
I mean, he did.
Yep.
They found the words from a story, from the Lord of the Rings story, but he just made up the tune on the spot. And that came about because they went to sing karaoke, and a producer was like, "Hey, you can actually sing. We're gonna make you sing on camera." There's some neat trivia in this about this. Again, these movies have lots of trivia, but yeah.
But we'll talk about that later.
Oh, sure, of course we will.
Some
But yeah, all I could think about is there's 6 dead elephants that are the size of, I don't know, very large things out there. You got to do something with all that meat. Might as well eat it.
Yeah. You better preserve it too, right?
Yeah,
you can't eat that whole thing.
Well, there's a lot of people.
It's pronounced Oliphant.
I know. I keep saying it wrong. It's Oliphant.
Oliphant jerky.
Oliphant. Yeah.
Get your Oliphant jerky, Oliphant steaks. I feel like I'm talking.
So when cutting one of those things up,
do
you slice from one end to the other? Do you empty the cavity? Because when you butcher something, you got to empty the cavity. So I guess you got to get into the cavern of the body to pull out the stuff, and then it just makes me wonder if do you take a giant like tree saw and chop it into giant ribs and all that. So one would think that it would take a while to really butcher one of those things.
Yeah.
I think you're just carving pieces off of it. I don't think it takes a bandsaw to get through a pig carcass. They don't have a bandsaw the size of, like, I don't know, the Rock of Gibraltar to get through that thing.
You think they'll be like whales where they just leave them be, right?
Probably.
They just, 20 years from now, those bones will still be out there.
I think it's more like the first scene of Frozen, where there's just guys cutting out chunks of ice. It's the same thing. It's just cutting out chunks of elephant.
All right, now that we've officially grossed out everyone listening to the show.
Hey, these questions need answers, right? I have not heard a podcast yet talk about how the Oliphants would be able to be disposed of after this battle.
I legit think about these types of things, but I'm also weird, and that's fine. But I do think of these things. I really do. So it's. I mean,
do they make little cathedrals like pirates had in that one Pirates movie where they were in the whale bones when Sparrow was getting forced married to another one, to a bride?
Could be.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't know. Or maybe it's the basis for the elephant graveyard from Lion King. I don't know.
Hey, there you go.
Anyway, okay, so 2003's Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. Let's pull up a comfy chair. Let's pull up a chair that was helicoptered into the location, and dive into this movie.
Yeah.
I never knew that. I was so blown away by that piece of trivia that Mark dropped on us last week. Did you know that, Travis, that John Reese Davies in his contract had a stipulation that if he was going to be anywhere on location, he had to have a recliner with him. So like when they're doing these mountain shots, they would literally airlift a recliner for him to sit down.
Yeah, well, I mean, they had room on the chopper because Sean Bean wasn't on it. He was too busy hiking up and down the mountain. So,
Well, I was going to say, was it
because he
Sean Bean
refused.
and Vigo? Didn't Vigo also hike pretty much everywhere?
I mean, Vigo did a lot, but Sean Bean refused to ride the helicopter. So he would get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning and hike up the mountain and meet him up there, and then they'd shoot, and then he would hike back down at the end of the day.
What a crazy
because
man.
he didn't want to ride the helicopter.
Oh, is it because he wasn't trying to stay in character? He was just afraid of heights?
No, he was just afraid to fly in the helicopters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, so he's like John Madden.
Yeah.
Because John Madden he never flew everywhere. He rode in his Madden bus to all the games.
Well, yeah, sure, but he just went from stadium to stadium. This guy had to like shoot film on top of a mountain
in the middle of nowhere.
You
know what? No, I would rather wake up at a stupid early time, get into costume, get into makeup, and then walk all the way up this mountain. That sounds like a better idea to me.
I will say that probably kind of pisses off the hair and makeup people because it's not it's not like he got up there and everything was in the same place as it was when he left the trailer. You know, because I remember one of the times
I'm
working
sure they had
on
somebody fly up there.
Oh yeah, they've got. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember when we were shooting the TV show, it was getting late, and the main actor decided that he wanted to do some push-ups in the middle of to try to get his energy back up, and the hair and makeup people had to run back on set because now he's sweating.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're not supposed to be sweating in this scene. Like anyway, this actors. Okay. Like I said, 2003's Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. My gosh, so this is a very long movie. The extended cut is like 4.5 hours. The theatrical cut was 3.5. And just because tradition dictates for no other reason, Andrew, why don't you tell us what this movie is about?
Gandalf and Aragorn lead the world of men against Sauron's army to draw his gaze from Frodo and Sam as they approach Mount Doom with the One Ring.
Okay, sure. Talk about 5 minutes of a 4.5 hour long movie.
Yeah. I mean, that pretty much sums it up, right?
It's ultimately what they're
nailed all the main points, right?
Yeah, all of them. All of the subtleties and the politics behind it and stuff. So we mentioned, I think, pre-show, we all have seen this in the theater and probably multiple times since.
Oh, sure.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep. I saw this opening night, and then I went back and saw it the next day because a friend of mine couldn't go opening night, and so I was like, "Nope, you're going to go see this. I'll go back and watch it with you." So I saw this twice in the span of 24 hours.
Wow.
So almost half of my 24 hours was spent watching this movie.
Yeah, I was going to say that's nearly half a day. I mean, that's a lot of time. That's awesome.
I ended up traveling to go see this one. I believe it was with you guys, with Sean and Corny. Went and saw this at the IMAX theater in Charlotte.
Yeah,
and ended up being in the back right corner against the wall because it was the only 3 seats available left when we all got there.
Yeah.
This is back before you could reserve seats, right?
Yeah. Well, and that was also when it was the Fathom events was showing the extended cut. So we sat in the theater for the 4.5 hours. We didn't. Yeah. We did that for the extended cut, and that was a long time. I remember because I had to work. I was still working at the theme park, and so I'd gotten off a 9-hour shift, and then drove straight over there with Cornelius, former member of the podcast, and 3 of us sat there and watched this long ass movie, but. Oof. It was cool to see in the theater, the extended cut. It was really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I was kind of hoping you would say that you told your boss you were going to lunch. And we're going to watch this movie.
Going
4.5 hours later.
I'll be back in 5 hours. Yeah, exactly. Oh, man, that's funny.
Okay, so maybe that wasn't the first time I saw it.
No, it wouldn't have been. There's no way.
Okay.
We all saw it. I don't know if you were with me opening weekend, but I remember seeing it opening weekend. I don't have a cool story like I did last week with our dear friend Andrew and all that stuff, but
yeah.
I'm trying to think.
I went and saw Two Towers in Boone and came out, and there was an inch and a half of snow on the ground from when I first went in. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I have another Andrew story related to this movie. I don't think I do. So, no Andrew stories tonight, listeners. I know that you like them, even though almost none of you know who he is. But
yeah,
yeah, it's not like.
Well, he did ruin it for your wife.
Oh my God, that's the story. That's the story. Thank you, Sam. I will tell this story. My wife and I think I have told part of this, right? I guess this will be new to basically Travis. But Sarah's reading the last book. I mean, she's got less than 100 pages to go. Andrew sees that she's reading the book, and he says, "Have you gotten to the part where the Eagles rescue Frodo and Sam?" She slams the book and says, "No, but I guess I don't need to now." And she never finished it. She was so pissed. Yeah.
Oh. That's the thing about Andrew. He's got tact.
Yes, he does.
Yeah. He always knows the right thing to say at the right time.
Yeah. Again, again, most of our listeners don't know who this guy is. He's a dear, sweet friend. He is the nicest guy you will ever meet. Nice. But my God, he has no tact and no common sense. But we all have that friend, and if you don't, then it's probably you. So
we got in trouble at his wedding, or at his half reception thing, because we all decided to start eating the wedding cake before.
It wasn't the cake. There. It wasn't the cake. It wasn't the wedding cake. It was Oh no, his wedding. Yeah, you're right. It was the cake.
Yes,
it was the cake.
Yeah, it was the cake.
Yeah. All right, enough about Andrew. Time to get back into this because again, most people don't care. So Sam, why don't you start off with your 5-word review and we'll run from there.
Sure. I've got 2 tonight. And my first one is movies can't get much bigger. In pretty much every category, movies can't get much bigger. Number of actors, number of minutes in a movie, the story itself, the entire epic nature of it all. You just can't get much bigger than this film. And Jackson certainly did really well ramping it up, right? We thought we saw it all with Two Towers, and the siege of Minas Tirith is just massive and just amazing. Love it. Yeah. And that kind of leads to my other one is just 4 words: greatest story ever shown. And I think this epic conclusion to one of the best stories ever written is just a masterclass in movie making. And it's everything we want movies to be. We want a big story. We want stakes. We want to care about the characters. We want all these different things. And this movie especially just ended up doing that for us. To the point where, you only half mind that the last hour and a half of the movie is them saying goodbye to each other, basically. Right. So it's just the crew, the actors, everybody kind of became this big family. And it almost felt like by the end of this movie, you were part of it. And there's not a lot of movies that make you feel that way. And I enjoy it. I enjoy, again, the final installment of what my imagination always thought Lord of the Rings would look like. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, this movie definitely did take its cinematic Viagra. It was a very, very bulbous film.
Yeah, and going back to what I said before, the scene of the horse riders going back into, not Osgiliath, I think it's called.
Yeah. That's so sad.
And the music and just the lack of empathy by Daddy there. Good Lord. It's just, again, I think that's when this movie not only shone the brightest, but really amped up what it was and why it's a Best Picture nomination. When you can tell a story without really beating someone over the heads with the narrative, I think they did a great job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely can't really disagree with any of that. I mean, it's cinematic Viagra. That's definitely going in the intro. Thank you for that, Andrew.
Yeah.
Speaking of not any of those things,
Travis. Going with that.
Yeah, Travis, what do you got for your 5-word review?
So kind of similar. Redefining the term film epic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because to this point, when I saw this in the theater, that moment where they look out over the Pelennor fields and it's just nothing but like this sea of blackness, and those are the orcs.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, I've never seen anything like that in a movie ever, and it went up from there. Like it just kept tacking on more and more. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced in a film to that point in my life, and really since then I haven't really felt like anything has reached that same level. And then you're right, it's the storytelling is epic, and just everything about it is just continually ratcheting up. It's fantastic. The other one, another one I had was just Pippin, leave it alone. Damn it, Pippin can't leave anything alone. I love Pippin, but just leave it alone, man.
Yeah, for God's sake, kid.
Come on.
Well, when we were watching it as a family here too, my daughter kept saying, what's wrong with him? What's he doing? And it was him, basically getting obsessed with that stupid eyeball thing.
Yeah.
But I do like that he kind of gets some redemption, right? Like,
oh, absolutely. Him and Mary both really do. There's so many great character arcs throughout the series of movies, and this one pays all of that off so well. And between Pippin, Mary, Éowyn, what happens with Theoden, and then of course Aragorn, and we'll talk about him probably a lot more. But yeah, I love the arcs and how everything gets paid off, and it all feels earned too. Yeah. Like nothing feels like it's shoehorned in.
Although the I am no man, I hate that.
Yeah,
I understand why she said it, but I always it kind of makes me shrink in my seat a little bit. Like, it's cheesy.
Did you hate it in the book though? Because that's a Tolkien line.
Oh, I know, but maybe just seeing it just didn't come off right for me.
It sounds weird in our 2022 sensibilities because this is a movie with a lot of dudes. I mean, there's like what?
Yeah.
There's like 3 women in this whole universe, right? Éowyn, Liv Tyler,
Éowyn, Arwen, and Galadriel.
Galadriel, yeah. Oh gosh, I forgot about Galadriel. Okay, there's 4 women. The other one being Rosie. Sam's wife, Rosie, right? Who doesn't even have a line, but like.
Well, you've got the mother with the children.
There's a lot of mothers with children, right? But all they do is cry. That's all their job is to do, is to be on screen and cry and make you feel sympathy towards them, which is a fine plot device. But again, like, no one has a mom, right? The Boromir and Faramir, they don't have a mother. The king, Rohan King. No, I can't think of names right now. My gosh, why am I doing this? Theoden, he doesn't have a wife, so like,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this is like the opposite of a Disney movie where, usually in Disney movies, they don't have mothers either. Actually, usually it's the same. They only have dads. So I guess it's similar. But no, the line it didn't bother me in the book because it's wordplay. But it is kind of neat that a woman written from a story point in the 1900s, 1910s, teens, kind of gets to be one of the heroes, which is kind of cool because those stories probably weren't getting written a lot back then. I wouldn't think. Not really. I mean, there was some, but
not in that view, right? That it was always, Guinevere was the fairy tale, right? Where the prince needed to come save and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. But by the way, I do just want to clarify real quick because you'll get people saying the books were published in the 50s. It was 1954. So,
but didn't Tolkien start writing these like in the trenches of World War I?
I mean, if you want to, you can say yes, because that's where the idea for The Hobbit gestated.
Sure.
But he didn't write The Hobbit until The Hobbit wasn't published until the 30s.
Right.
37, I think. And then he wrote this after that. But so like the seeds of it maybe got started then, but the stories really got fleshed out later on, especially this.
That actually to me is more impressive, because the 50s feel like it was like the worst time for women.
I mean, a lot of it was probably.
Yeah.
You know, like it feels like that there was, because in the 19 teens and the 1940s, women at least had an integral part in the war effort and other things. It felt like they had more agency than they would, because then it became, after that, it was like, go back to the kitchen and be quiet kind of a thing. So,
well, yeah, Tolkien actually wanted to, instead of Return of the King, he actually wanted to call this one The Feast of Sausage. But he said, it's probably not going to sell.
Yeah.
As good as Return of the King.
That one doesn't market as well. So let's try some.
He was very good at the marketing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Andrew's on it tonight. I like it. Okay. I'm trying to think, how did we get to this point where we're talking about her and the line? But we were talking about story arcs. Some of the other story arcs, I love the story arcs. I like some of the other characters. Like, so the four hobbits have a lot to do. I mean, they have a lot to do, and they affect so much change. And I don't know why I didn't pick up on it before this viewing, because I've seen these movies all, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, whatever. Mark last week, he literally said that he has watched The Two Towers easily triple digits. He says that's a movie that he just puts on in the background.
Mm-hmm. I can definitely see that.
It's just a movie that just runs on loop all the time, and so. But for some reason, it wasn't until this viewing really where I was like, oh my gosh, the Hobbits really do a lot. It always kind of, for whatever reason, it felt like the main story, the A story, was Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas. They were the primary, and then Frodo and Sam were kind of the other primary, and then the other two Hobbits were just there to get into mischief and to be comic relief. And then for some reason, it was like it clicked this time. It's like, no, these guys do stuff. Pippin comes up with the idea to have Treebeard go the other way, and therefore shutting down Isengard. It was Gandalf's idea, but Pippin climbs the thing to light the beacons, which is such a cool scene. It's such a cool scene.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, my brain does what, Sam? What does my brain think?
What are prices to go see New Zealand?
No, my brain thinks...
How are they manning all this?
Who are these poor men that have to stand up there on these mountaintops on the off chance that once in 1,000 years the beacons are going to get lit?
My thought this time was, how do they keep the wood dry?
Yes. Yeah.
That's just covered in oil.
Oh, maybe. That's actually probably pretty accurate. But like, it's just two dudes up there.
Remember, he dumped oil on the wood right before he lit it.
Yeah.
They have like an oil reserve.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
That's probably how that went.
They needed an accelerant.
Well, then you got to wonder, what's the shift like? What's the rotating shift? Is it a daily thing? Is it like 3 shifts a day?
That's an incredible place to have to climb to.
I would think that's like a 6-month thing. You're there for 6 months and you get rotated out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like you have to go to your wife.
You got a little shack that you're sleeping in.
Yeah.
It's like manning a lighthouse.
Yeah, it's like but
exactly.
Make sure you take some books with you. Anyway,
I just whittle.
That's just the stuff I think about. It's like, oh my gosh, it's such a cool scene, but those poor men. And it was always 2. There was always 2 up there. I guess in case one gets sick or something, that the other one could go get help.
If one is sleeping, you got to have one on watch.
That's a good point too. Someone's got to be on watch. You're right. That's a really good point. So, I mean, it's a neat idea too. I mean, it's just, I like the idea that the 2 kingdoms 1,000 years ago said, hey, we should find a way to communicate in case one needs to come to the aid of the other. Yeah, this is a good idea. Well, how about
because Rohan didn't have a plant here, so,
right?
There's no two-way communication. That's as good as you can get. Smoke signals aren't going to work.
They I think didn't they used to have a plant here? Like a lot of the kings had them, and then they got lost.
They did at some point. Yeah. I mean, we can dive. deep
Yeah.
into
Yeah, I read the Silmarillion
The
once.
lore
I
for
don't.
that.
I don't want to.
Do that again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a
You know
tough
what?
read.
What I was thinking this time too is, man, it would suck to have to bring new logs up there.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah,
So
now
you've
they
set
gotta
them on
reset all
fire,
those.
and now you've got to bring in 3 tons of wood
Yep.
to the top of a mountain, uphill.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Both in the snow, both ways.
in the snow.
And hope there's not an invasion between. Like,
Exactly. Right.
Oh yeah.
we
It's
can't
fine.
light
They
the
had a
beacon. Why?
Chevy
We're still setting
Silverado.
Yeah. No, they could just use one of those elephants to pull. No, they're all dead. Never mind.
Yeah.
Poor elephants.
Where do you think they got the oil? The oil.
Elephant
Or the-
oil is better than whale
Yeah.
oil. Yeah. Ugh, gross. Again, all of our listeners are getting sick. Andrew, what's your 5-word review?
Well, it's not 5 words, but I don't care.
Well, one of mine is only 4, so do you want to borrow one of
Okay.
mine?
I'll probably need more than one, but okay. A fitting conclusion to the world's greatest cinematic trilogy.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
I got to thinking as I finished this, and it's not often that I've sat and watched these movies. I've seen the extended cuts of all the films, probably twice, and I've seen the theatrical cut of each of them twice. So I've only seen this about 4 times, but it's been a while, since I've watched this, and seeing it again really does, in its entirety now, really does drive home the fact that we have movie trilogies all over the place, but I don't think any are as good as these. And I'm sure people would argue that fact and maybe say The Godfather or whatever, but I would have to
2/3 of
disagree.
The Godfather.
The third one does fall flat a little bit.
Yeah. My other 5-word review kind of goes hand in hand with what you said earlier. The theatrical release is not enough of this one specifically, because there are things that get left out of the theatrical cut that I think are important. Saruman dies,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't know that in theatrical cut, right?
Yeah.
And it just kind of, it's a conversation between he and Gandalf, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because it concludes that portion of the story.
Yeah. It closes that chapter. And
Yeah.
there was audible gas in my living room, by the way, when he fell on the spike.
Yeah.
And my girls were like,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the fun part about that, like we've talked about how there's so many stories from making these movies, and that particular scene has 2 of my favorites, both involving Christopher Lee. And one of them is when he's laying there and he's got the prosthetic piece of the wheel sticking out of his chest, and they're doing an overhead camera shot, and he looks up and he's like, "This feels awfully familiar. Like 27 years ago, I did this same thing, but when I looked up, I saw Peter Cushing, and now I'm seeing Peter Jackson." And it's just like, and Peter Jackson talking about how great it was that he got to impale Sir Christopher Lee on a spike. But then the other one is the Grima when Grima stabs him in the back, because the story is, Peter Jackson's talking about he's like, I'm the director, I have to tell him, about what's happening and kind of the big sounds that he's making and the yelling he's doing, and Chris just looks at me and he's like, "Do you know the sound you make when you're stabbed in the back?" Because I do.
Because I do. Yeah.
Because he
Oh
was
my God.
he was part of the OSS in World War II.
Yeah.
Is the what was it? It was called the Bureau of Ungentlemanly Warfare. And so he knew what happened when you stab somebody in the back. He's like, the wind just goes right out of you. And it was Peter Jackson was like, "You know what? I'm going to default to you. You know more than I do. Do what you want." And just kind of walked away.
Yeah. This, as we will mention in our top 3 later on, is a Best Picture winning movie, and I think it's rightly so. You know, there's so much about this film that it's like eating a meal and everything on the plate was great and wanting more. You know,
you could study this film like you study the great films, and the cinematography and the storytelling and the CGI effects even for 2003. I mean, it's done so well.
Now, I will say, in the last hour, I did have a few too many mashed potatoes. Like, it gets a little long there at the end. But again, like I said with one of the previous movies, I don't think that it's unnecessary. I just know that it's long as I'm watching it, you know? And I feel like, again, Peter Jackson is saying, this is an epic, and you need to experience the epic for what it is, including spending time with it. And so as we're saying our goodbyes to everybody, and taking an hour to do so, it really, you know, you're just experiencing the epic. And you know, there are people that would just say, "No, we could have done without all that," and I could see their point in some ways. But if you really want to live this movie, this is a part of it.
And I think too, that 40 minutes, I think it's about 40 minutes of runtime is just like wrapping it up and the multiple endings and all of that. Yeah. If this was a standalone movie and Peter Jackson was making just this 4.5 hour movie, yes, that's way too much ending. It's like an Aerosmith song from the 90s where it's 2 minutes of song and 4 minutes of ending. But when you look at it through the context of a 3-movie trilogy and everything that they've done to that point, this is all very important wrapping up, and kind of there's a lot of emotion tied to that I think is well earned.
Yeah. And speaking of emotion, if you don't get emotional in some way, somewhere in this film, something wrong with you. Like, you got to check your pulse. Whether that's anger, whether that's frustration, whether that's sadness, or whether it's, you know, happy
or
tears,
jubilation
whatever
of joy.
Yeah. You know,
or
whatever it might be.
Hyped up from Theoden's speech and ready to run through a wall, because you played that clip at the beginning, and that every time I hear that, and I have watched this movie I don't know how many times, every time I hear that clip of Bernard Hill giving that speech, I'm ready to jump up and just run straight through a wall and not care. It just gets me going. Like, I can't help it. You're right. There's so much emotion in this movie.
Yeah.
A couple of things I wanted to mention as you guys were talking. All these ideas are bouncing around in my head. So, talking about the ending, my favorite moment in the ending is probably the quietest moment, when the 4 hobbits are back at the pub, and they're now looking at Hobbit life through these new eyes, and they feel awkward and they can't fit in, and it just reminds you of soldiers who come back from war having seen the shit that they've seen,
exactly,
and they don't know how to go back to it. And obviously Frodo is the one of the 4 that can't. He just can't go back. And Sam takes the leap of faith to go ask the prettiest girl in town to marry him, because at this point he's like, I've faced down goblins and the dragon, like whatever. I can go ask the prettiest girl in town to marry me. That's the easiest thing I'll ever do, you know? So,
I walked into a volcano and came out of it. I can ask her out.
Yeah, I picked up my best friend, carried him into a volcano, and then got picked up by a giant eagle on the way out. And this is nothing. So
in some ways, this to me is Sam's story.
Oh, yeah.
Because as Frodo is carrying this ring and we see the weight that is put on him as he gets closer and you know, this is just destroying him, his being, right? As he gets weaker, Sam has to get stronger. Yeah. He has to carry his friend. He has to be the hero. And that to me, I mean, I kind of looked at it differently as I watched it this time. It's really his story in a lot of ways.
I really found it interesting today. And again, it was one of those moments where it just hit me like a ton of bricks. See, I said the thing right this time, Sam. And that was that Frodo is a flawed character. I mean, like a lot of movies with our hero who is flawed, up until this point, up until this movie, Frodo is pretty much the perfect person. He's Captain America. He's everything you want. He does all the right things. He makes all the right choices. And then in this movie, some of those choices start not being so great. And then at the very end, ultimately, he kind of fails, right? He is there to toss the ring into the fire and doesn't. Because the ring finally took him. And it ultimately comes down to, Gollum having to take the choice out of his hand, literally. And and having that moment. But like there's something very genuine. I know what I'm saying, like I don't think it would have been as impactful had he walked over to the edge and just tossed it in. Because like it like you said, it was a huge weight on him, and it was really hard for him, and ultimately he kind of fails, and it would have only been even more, I think, a little eye-rolling worthy if Sam was the one that ultimately takes it from him and then tosses it in. I think the way it worked was kind of perfect. That Gollum is the reason why it happens, because it kind of needed to be. Like Gollum is the way how.
And they also they saved Gollum so many times in terms of the pity that Frodo had on Gollum is ultimately what wins the day.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Gosh. Back to emotions, and then I'm going to do my 5 words. So when we got to the you bow for no one, or you bow to no one, and then the king bows to the 4 hobbits. I mean, I weep every time. Like every time I do. And I was back and forth on Twitter with some people about watching the movie, whatever. And they were like, oh my gosh, that scene gets me every time. And then I posted the GIF of it. And they were like, oh my gosh, I'm crying looking at the GIF of this thing. Because it's such an emotional moment. And it's just, like, it's a moment that you don't get very often in film or in storytelling, where the guy that is now the king of the world bows to these 4 guys who are, these humble beginning kind of dudes. It's just so awe-inspiring. It's really, really awesome. And it's one of the best moments of the series, in my opinion. So, okay. So I have a couple of 5-word reviews also. And one of them is 5 and one of them is 4. My first one is the best 6 endings ever. So we're kind of poking fun at that. This next one I thought was appropriate because as we record this, we are in the middle of the 2022 Winter Olympics. So, though I know this reference is more for Summer Olympics, but the joke I think will still work, and that is they stuck the landing. And I mean that as in, I think Sam, you mentioned, or one of you guys mentioned Andrew mentioned, like, this is the best trilogy, like, ever. And I know that there's some people saying, oh, Star Wars, the original Star Wars, but, like, those are great movies. But these 3 movies are all genuinely great. I mean, again, this one did win Best Picture. Now, I did look up what it won Best Picture against. Nominees were Lost in Translation, Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, Mystic River.
Which is a really good movie.
It is a good movie. And Seabiscuit, which is...
So it had some stiff competition.
I'm telling you, Mystic River, though, that's a hell of a movie. Yeah. Like,
I need to see
I could see that winning a Best Picture in some other year, but... You have a combination of how good this movie is, and there was a little bit of a kind of, well, you've done 3 movies in the last 3 years that have all been up for Best Picture. Here's the one that's going to win it.
Yeah.
There is a tiny bit of that, but this earns it. This earns that Best Picture.
Mhm.
100%. I mean, I'm not going to say that it does not, because it's just that good. And the thing is, when you mentioned the Star Wars trilogy, part of what helps these movies is that they have such a good source material that has this amazing story to start with. And this is, in my opinion, the best adaptation of a work into another art form that I can think of. Because the books are fantastic, but they're very different from these movies. And they made choices early on. You probably talked about with Fellowship and Two Towers, but choices they made structurally to the narrative that are very different from what Tolkien had written to make for a better movie while still keeping all the feel of the books.
Yeah.
Right.
And that says a lot.
Yeah. Not to do it, but I have to throw it out there. Unlike The Hobbit, which they made choices to try to make better movies, but they lost the tone of the book.
Yeah, well, that never needed to be a trilogy to start with.
No, it didn't.
Right.
On top of the fact that Peter Jackson ended up directing those, but it's like he didn't start out with that in mind, so he didn't have the time into it, the investment into it personally, and he kind of had to come along and.
Well, this was he had been, and Fran had been working on this for years and years and years. And there was, like you mentioned, there was a vested interest for decades almost into making this trilogy. So when he was offered The Hobbit, he had like a year to prepare. So because it started off with what Guillermo del Toro was going to direct him. Yeah. And he ended up not directing. He stayed on as a producer, but he didn't direct. And so Peter Jackson steps in, and it's a very different thing. You know?
I also remember, and I don't want to spend too much more time on this because I don't want to, but I remember specifically that when the Hobbit was announced, it was going to be 2 movies. It was just going to be 2 parts.
It was originally, yeah.
And then they decided to stretch it into 3. But like, I for some reason I remember finishing the first movie being like, okay, I can see how they could make this just one other one. Just make one 3-hour movie and you got it. But they made 2. Anyway, that's The Hobbit is fine. Go watch the cartoon.
No,
version.
it's not.
Go watch the cartoon.
It's not fine.
Okay, you're right.
It's in my mind, it's like the prequels to Star Wars. It's just it almost ruins the original. It leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
I don't go that far because, first of all, nothing is going to ruin the original for me. I don't care what it is. Whatever that original thing is will always be that thing. Mm-hmm. But the Hobbit movies, much like the prequels, have some good bones, and there's some good stuff in there. The problem is that some of the execution doesn't work, and there's changes that they made or things that they added, some of which is good. Like I like expanding Radagast and giving him more screen time, but then a love triangle out of kind of nothing I didn't care for.
Yeah, that was bad. Legolas being in this was also bad. I think that was a bad choice. I know that they just wanted Orlando Bloom to do something, but
you have to wonder too, how much is studio? Like how much did studio influence? Be like, well, you're going to get the money to make these, but we want this stuff in there. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know all those stories. It's hard to say. It's not executed nearly as well.
No,
for
it's
sure.
No. All right. That's the last we will speak of that other trilogy. Okay. So I kind of broke my rule. You know how I kind of have a rule, Travis, you're not aware of this, but I kind of have a weird rule. If I like a movie, I usually don't take a lot of notes because usually what it means is that I'm sucked into the movie and there's just not much for me to write about.
Sure.
I took a lot of notes, and maybe that's just because it's a 4.5-hour movie, or maybe it's because I'm noticing things that I didn't notice before, or I'm just being dumb like the elephant, food, whatever. And because like my first few notes were just simple things like, hey, that's a cool way to show Smeagol turning into Gollum. We get like is that a montage, Sam? Or no?
Yeah, it would be a montage.
Okay. Yeah, so might have a montage. But I liked showing his, for a lack of a better word, origin story. I liked that. And it didn't take very long. It was just a few minutes. And then the whole scene at Isengard, I'd forgotten about the extended version with the stabby and the falling and the thing. And apparently there's a trap door on the roof of Isengard. People just go up there all the time.
Sure.
Why not? Just put a railing up there. Jeez.
They don't believe in railings. Remember,
Not
it's like
OSHA
Lucas
approved.
and Jackson.
There's nothing OSHA approved in Lord of the Rings or Star Wars.
Nope.
John Noble plays a really great, crazy old madman. He was so well casted in this. And my wife says,
Yeah.
How does he get his face to twitch like that? And I said, I don't know, but maybe when I become old and crazy like him, I can do that. Because he constantly was just twitchy. But he's great. I love him in Fringe. I thought he was great in that TV show.
Oh, yeah. He's wonderful in Fringe. And I mean, this was the first thing I ever remember seeing him in was this movie. And I was like, who is this guy? Because he's great.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, I see the pilot for Fringe, and I'm like, oh, it's friggin' that dude.
Yeah, it's that crazy dude.
I couldn't think of his name, and I was sold. Like, I was hooked on the show after that.
Which is funny because, like, as soon as I saw him in Fringe, I thought, is he going to be a good guy or a bad guy? You know, because
he's got one of those. He's got that ability to be like he can play the kind-hearted, kind of grandfatherly old man, or he can be the, oh boy, I'm going to give this dude a wide berth old man. Like, I don't want to get within a quarter mile of this guy because he's like he can do that with his face so well. Mm-hmm. He can emote so much without saying a word.
Yeah. I did note that this movie has a lot of pep talks. There's a lot of people kind of talking other people up. You know, Sam has to give Frodo like 2 or 3 pep talks throughout the thing, which you get, right? I mean, you get that. Frodo is going through hell, literal, physical, emotional, spiritual hell, and Sam there, his gardener, is there to help him. I just noticed, and then, you know, you have to have the pep talk that I played at the beginning, you know, the rally the troops talk, and then Aragorn does the one at the end. There's a lot of pep talks in this movie, but you know, people are down. This is a hard time. You need people to lead and to say nice things.
Well, unless you're the crazy Stuart that's, you know, run for your lives, flee.
Right. Yeah.
And then
he's giving the anti-pep talk.
And then gets bonked in the noggin by Gandalf. I love it. I love that none of the guards cared.
Stopped them.
Nope.
Yeah, they didn't stop them at all.
Yeah. It's like, it's Gandalf.
Well,
he's going to do what he's going to do.
I mean, yeah, it's Gandalf. He's mythic in that place. So that I wouldn't. If I was a guard and I saw that dude, I'd just be like, you do what you want. I didn't see anything.
Speaking of Gandalf and in the extended edition, I had forgotten that the Witch King breaks his staff.
Mm-hmm.
And because I remember watching the theatrical version going, where did his staff go? It's just missing. Like, where did it go? It's like the Mandalorian sniper tuning fork gun. It just, 1 minute it's there and then the next it's not. I guess that's a spoiler for Mandalorian. But yeah, no, the Witch King takes it. That was pretty cool. He just says your staff is broken, and it just, I mean, like that's what Gandalf did to Isengard, not to Isengard, but to Sauron. He just yeah. So those just walk up to a wizard and say the magic words, and you'll break their staff. That's pretty crazy. Let's see, I mentioned that joke. Oh, so Sam played this video game. Travis, I don't know. I know you do a Twitch stream, but I don't know if you play video games much. But I played the Shadow of Mordor video game, which I don't know if we can consider it canon to Lord of the Rings, but I think it does. I think it's kind of canon to the Lord of the Rings because it tells some really interesting stories. You know, because it's basically telling the story of how Mordor took over Minas Morgul, and the character that you are the steward, you are the manager, facilitator of Minas Morgul when Mordor takes over, and that's your story. Is you and a cursed elf king, one of the 3, are there to exact your revenge on Mordor. That's what the game is based on. The sequel to that game, the sequel gives us where Shelob comes from.
See, I know of the games. I own Shadow of Mordor. I've never played it. It's one of the dozens of games in my Steam library that just sits there sad and lonely.
It's so good. It's so much fun.
It's a good game. Really if you like the kind of, it's not quite open world, but kind of. But you know, you go to a place and do a thing, and you know, there's some sneaking around, and there's a lot of hacking and slashing, and you get powers and power up, you know, things like that. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, there's a whole storyline to Shelob and why a giant spider has a name, because there's a reason. So. Go play the game is all I'm going to say. I did also write, even the best picture uses the Wilhelm scream twice.
Yeah, it was twice in this one. I was picking them out because I was saying before we started recording, I watched all 3 of the movies over like a 4.5-5 day period. And yeah, there's a Wilhelm scream in all of them, but there's 2 in this one.
Yeah. I
was like, oh, there's a Wilhelm. And then a little while later, damn it, there's another one.
There's another one. Last couple of notes I'm going to go over, and then we can get into some clips or if there's anything else you want to talk about. But one of the other small moments that I really loved, and I guess it's not a small moment, I guess it's actually a big moment, but I love that they filmed it, is that in the Battle of Helm's Deep, when the Rohirrim are coming in for the rescue, and the orcs are there, or the Uruk-hai are there with their pikes, and they're going to spear the hell out of all those horses. And then the sun comes up and it blinds them, and that's why they lift their spears, because they're blinded, and that's how the horses are able to kind of cut through the ranks. Or in this case, we don't have the sun magic on our side. We just have pure rage on the part of the Rohirrim, and the orcs get scared. They get scared, and I love that like you can. These are extras. These are paid extras to be orcs. They're in makeup for forever, and the director's saying, "Look scared." These guys look terrified, and I really like that. Like, it was just enough for them to raise their pikes, for that army to just cut through them like they're driving tanks. I mean, it's such a cool scene.
If I'm out on a battlefield and Carl Urban is charging at me, screaming like a banshee, I'm going to pee myself too.
Yeah, because there comes Doc McCoy, and he's going to say something like, "Damn it, Jim, I'm a horse rider, not a doctor." Oh, it's so good. See, I just snuck in that Star Trek connection. I didn't have to. Oh my gosh, we took so much grief, by the way, in the Fellowship of the Ring, not remembering Carl Urban's name. I was trying to find the Star Trek connection in the Fellowship, and there's Cameron, who does a Star Trek podcast, couldn't remember Carl Urban's name, but Carl Urban's not in Fellowship.
Yeah.
But the actor who is in the suit, who is in the makeup suit of Sauron, he is a Romulan soldier man, whatever, in the 2009 Star Trek movie.
Yep.
So that was the only thing I could find. But we couldn't think of Carl Urban's name, and like we got on Twitter, we got blasted. How could you not remember Carl Urban's name? So anyway, Carl Urban, got it. That's kind of it. Oh, the last one I do say is I kind of feel like the 4 of the hobbits should have been invited to go on the boat to leave, not just Frodo.
Well, they didn't carry the ring though.
Yeah,
Only
but the
Frodo
other 3 did equally important things.
Yeah, but Sam had some tail to chase.
Yeah, he did. He's got a hot wife now and some little kitties. But like, hey, Sam, you want to come too? You want to come? No, you good? Okay. Pippin, Merry? No, you can just go.
I think it all has to do with the other side in the gray mist or whatever they would call it. You are over the ring influence. Like, it helps. You just don't have. It's basically a respite from what the ring did to you.
Yeah. No, I get it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I get why it is the way it is. It just made me think, like, they deserve some love too. They did a lot of hard stuff. But
at least give them the option of first refusal, right?
Yeah.
Be like, Pip, Mary, you want to? No, you good? Okay, cool. We're gonna go.
Yeah.
But we offered.
Yeah.
So.
Just so you know. Yeah. It is. It also is kind of funny. I love the idea that like there's a ticketing system. You know what I'm saying? Like we've been invited to do the thing. Like it felt like there's a guy there that says
Is there an elfish TSA?
Yeah, exactly. Like, are they going to get to the other side of the ocean and like, oh, no ticket, and they're going to throw you out like Harrison Ford did to the Nazi? And
they do that like halfway.
Yeah,
right? They're halfway across the ocean, and then they're coming along. Tickets, please.
Yeah. Oh, I
just tossing hobbits out of the boat.
Oh,
would have been a great callback though if you had like Bilbo goes across the plank onto the boat, and here's Gandalf and Frodo walking, and you see Elrond standing there, right? And then Merry and Pippin just come running onto the boat, and he's just got that same look on his face like he did in the Fellowship moment.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Did Gandalf go too? I don't remember. Did he go too?
Yeah, he did.
So there's no more.
Because that was the end of his journey, his purpose of being Middle Earth.
Okay.
So he got to go to the Grey Havens as well.
So I wonder if there are other, like Radagast and some of the other wizards are still floating around. Interesting. I don't know. I mean, are there stories post the Third Age?
I don't know of any offhand. I mean, Radagast is probably out somewhere high on shrooms with a bunch of animals because that's just what a Radagast do.
Mm-hmm.
And the Blue Wizards, who knows? Nobody even knows their names.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. All right. That's fine. Okay. We ready for some clips? Because boy, do I have some.
Let's do it.
All right. Here we go. I just really like Smeagol just really taking time to think about the taste palette for Shelob.
All she gets is filthy oxes. And that doesn't taste very nice, does they, precious?
Yeah. The orcs don't taste good.
he's just looking out for her. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's see. This is Gandalf being Gandalf.
There's no lie in Pippin's eyes. A fool, but an honest fool he remains.
An honest fool.
Is Ian McKellen as Gandalf not one of the best pieces of casting in the history of film? I mean,
absolutely.
He friggin' is Gandalf.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. You're absolutely right. He's great. I mean, it kind of put him on the map, right? I mean, he was Magneto the year before. He was because X-Men was in 2000.
Yeah, I mean, I knew who he was prior even to that, and I had seen him in a few things. Apt Pupil was one he had done that was really good.
Yeah.
He'd been doing movies for quite a while.
Yeah.
From a mass audience standpoint, to be Magneto, follow that up with being Gandalf and being in one of the largest most popular film franchises of all time. That definitely put him on the map.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just kind of crazy to think that like you said, the guy's been around for a really long time, but it's not until he's, I don't know, in his late 60s before he really strikes it big. It's just, more proof that just keep doing your thing. You never know when it's going to hit.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, he plays Death in Last Action Hero. There's a deep cut for you, for the 5 people that like that movie. Okay.
That's a good one.
Sure. Here's Gandalf talking more to Pippin.
Lord Denethor is Boromir's father. To give him news of his beloved son's death would be most unwise. And do not mention Frodo or the ring. And say nothing of Aragorn either. In fact, it's better if you don't speak at all about him too.
just don't say stuff. Just be there and be quiet.
And then they walk right in, and he's lamenting his son's death.
Yeah,
it's like,
Lord. Crap.
Yeah.
Just a real quick dovetail on the Gandalf thing, because you may have talked about this, I don't know, but Sean Connery was offered the role of Gandalf.
Yeah.
And didn't understand it, so he turned it down, which
dear Lord,
is great, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, he could have very easily just been like, sure, I'll do that. You're going to pay me. But he didn't. and we got Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that is a bullet well dodged. I think because I think you're right. I think the problem would have been is that he would have been too big for the part. Like I think what makes the casting great is that most of these guys are good, solid actors, but none of them are superstars.
Right.
That's the difference. Yeah, they're good actors. Like Ian McKellen is a fantastic actor.
Yeah.
Right. He's got so much presence. He's done stage acting forever, and he can embody the role. But he isn't and wasn't a superstar.
Yeah.
Viggo Mortensen's the same way. You know, none of them were superstars, so they were never bigger. They never had to have their name above the title.
Yeah.
You know, they're not a Tom Cruise or a Will Smith type where they're going to take away almost from the character. You're not watching Ian McKellen on screen. You're watching Gandalf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's to your point specifically. That's what makes it great. And that's what, some of the other movies that done this kind of thing, like Star Wars was great at this. No one had heard of any of those guys except Sir Alec Guinness. Like most of those guys were fairly unknown dudes, and that's kind of the way that they wanted it. So when they cast for, the prequels, I mean, yeah, you bring in Liam Neeson, but you're only going to bring him in for a movie. But, Hayden Christensen was a nobody. Heck, even Ewan McGregor was a pretty new dude. Not many people had heard of. Natalie Portman had just done a couple of things, but she wasn't a star yet. So I think when you're able to cast like that, I think that's what great. Heck, that's what makes freaking Iron Man so awesome. Is because at the time RDJ wasn't. He was just that, really? That's the guy you want to be to lead your superhero movie? Like, okay. It ended up being perfect. RDJ is Tony Stark. So,
Yeah.
Casting matters. Casting matters.
It very much does. I mean, look how close we were to having Stuart Townsend as Aragorn.
Who?
He was Stuart Townsend.
There's a reason why I said who.
Village of the Damned. Queen of the Damned?
No.
I'm going to look him up.
He was Lestat in Queen of the Damned. He was Dorian Gray in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Extraordinary Gentlemen. Yeah. No. God, no.
He was cast as Strider and had to back out for whatever reason. And Jackson recast him because he figured he was too young to play the part. And then they bring in Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, good call there too.
And can you picture? Yeah, can you picture anyone else as Aragorn at this point? It's difficult. And he was like a last minute replacement.
Yeah.
And he was another one who, had a solid career prior to this movie, but it was always playing smaller parts like in Crimson Tide and stuff like that. Or I think there was another one he was in. I can't think of the title of it now. Kind of a thriller that he had done prior to it. But he was an actor. And if you were a film buff at the time, you may have recognized his name or had seen his face. But then this movie comes out and he just blows up, puts him on the map. John Reese Davies is the same way. John Reese Davies, you knew him as Sala and you'd seen him in things, but he was this was a big exposure for him.
Yeah. Yeah, he did, right before Fellowship, Viggo had done 28 Days. Let's see. He did Psycho, the 1998 Psycho movie. He was in G.I. Jane. He was in Daylight. Let's see. I'm skipping over some. Crimson Tide. Yeah, he's the missile.
A Perfect Murder is the one I was thinking of.
Perfect Murder.
98.
Yep. Most of the stuff I've never heard of though. Boiling Point, Young Guns 2, Leatherface 3. He was Tex.
Yeah.
He was in an episode of Miami Vice also. So, yeah. Oh, he was in the 1985 Witness. He was in Witness. Mm-hmm. All right. We watched that for the podcast. What was he in Witness? Mm-hmm. He was Moses Hochlittner. Anyway, there you go. Viggo, what a career. Good for him. Okay. Yeah, no, casting, I mean, gosh, even like Orlando Bloom, like, has a dude ever looked more like an elf than that man at that age? I mean, he almost looks translucent just standing there.
Everybody they had playing elves, by the way, like how tough is that for your self-esteem if you're on set on a day where they're shooting stuff with the elves? And you're just surrounded by all these tall,
really attractive people, yeah.
Ridiculously beautiful people. Like you've got Orlando Bloom and Liv Tyler and friggin' Kate Blanchett, and it's all of them. Martin Sokas, like every single one of them is just like, no, stop it. You're all too beautiful. Quit it.
This isn't the CW. Get out of here.
Brett from frickin' Flight of the Conchords is one of the elves. That blew my mind. I never made that connection until this time watching it, and I realized that the one elf, when Arwen is riding the horse and she kind of has the moment where she sees the vision, the elf that's talking to her, that's like, my lady, we need to go. That's Brett from Flight of the Conchords.
I've never watched that show. I know what it is, but I've never watched it.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, he Orlando, like right before, so he did before this movie, the Fellowship. He had done one episode of Midsummer Murders as Peter Drinkwater. Before that, he did one episode uncredited of a TV show called Smack the Pony. Before that, he did a movie called Wild, and his character was called Rent Boy. And then he was uncredited character in a TV show called Casualty. Like, that's it. And then he gets the Fellowship of the Ring. Like, his agent was awesome. He can do action. He can do a lot of action, and he's really pretty. And he can, give him a blonde wig. And then from there, he goes and does, Black Hawk Down. And then the rest of this stuff. And then Troy and Kingdom of Heaven. He's so good in Kingdom of Heaven. Go watch Kingdom of Heaven, the director's cut. It is so freaking good.
Yes. But only the director's cut.
Only the director's cut.
Right.
Yeah. Because, Sam, you were one, right? You were one of the people I forced to watch the director's cut, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's such a good movie.
It's better.
Yeah. Oh, plus of course, all the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, too. He did all those pirate movies. And, yes, Three Musketeers. Anyway, there you go. And now Carnival Row, doing sexy stuff with that other pretty lady. I can't think of her name. Okay,
and I have to mention again Christopher Lee, just because it's Christopher Lee.
Oh yeah.
And as Sauron, like pitch perfect as Sauron, on top of being the one person involved in everything who had met Tolkien.
Yeah. Yeah, we mentioned that a few episodes ago. I can't remember which one, but we mentioned that he had, in fact, met him, which is really awesome. And we also mentioned that he auditioned for Gandalf. He wanted to be Gandalf. Mm-hmm. And
I don't blame him.
I don't blame him either, but I don't see it working. He looks like a grumpy old man that just wants to kill you. It's just
I could see that, though, before Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Sure, yeah, I could too. Yeah,
and I think if this movie had been made in, say, the 80s, if he was just a little bit younger, he could have pulled off. He could have been Gandalf.
Sure,
but I think by that point he was old enough, and he definitely played a cranky Sauron so much better.
Yeah, he really angry. Just okay. Still have some more clips to play. If you're going to say the name of your movie in your movie, I will capture it.
And I tell you now, I will not bow to this ranger from the north, last of a ragged house long bereft of lordship.
Authority is not given to you to deny the return of the king, steward.
I love how he uses the word steward as a freaking insult.
Uh-huh.
He might as well have just said bitch. I love it.
I mean, that was Middle Earth for bitch.
Well, I mean, last episode we had some really good smack talk, right? We had some great smack talk in Saruman was just two towers. I gotta spell towers.
Oh, for sure.
Let's see. Come on, this is great. Trash talk.
Gandalf the White. Gandalf the Fool.
There we go. Yeah, that's some trash talk right there. That's great.
I love all the different names that Gandalf has too.
Yeah.
Gandalf the Grey, Mithrandia, Gandalf Greyhim, just all the different names. Like everybody knows him as somebody just a little bit different.
Yeah. Just like it depends on how he approached them at some point in the past.
Yep.
I apparently was typing very fast, and I don't remember what this means because it's not an actual word. What I typed, WSHTHAT. Wish that, I guess I was trying to say. I don't know. Here we go.
You wish now that our places had been exchanged.
Got it.
That I had died and Boromir had lived.
Yes. I wish that.
There we go. Yeah, that's
worst dad ever.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, big time.
Seriously.
It's so sad. I mean, it's so sad that Faramir feels like the only way that he can come back. Because he even says, I'll go take Osgiliath one way or another. If I don't see you again or whatever. And he's like, yeah, I'll praise you in which the manner you return or something like that. Like even
or depending on the matter you return.
Yeah, like even if you die, but you don't take Osgiliath, then you will not be honored. It's like, gee, Lord gracious. Okay. Here's some good Gimli stuff.
Well, this is a thing unheard of. An elf will go underground, when a dwarf dare not.
That's right.
Yep.
Like a little bit of Gimli there. Let's see. Here's a little bit of Sam getting pissed.
That's for Frodo! And for the Shire! And that's for my old Godfather!
I love it.
I love it. Rudy just tearing up the field.
Oh my gosh. I also really like, and this is just such a small detail, but I was looking for it, is that because he's holding Sting, right? He's swords akimbo, right? He's dual wielding.
Mm-hmm.
And when the third orc dies, when he stabs him and he pulls the sword out, Sting is no longer blue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yay, somebody in the effects department was paying attention. I love that detail. Now, of course, I think there is actually one on the top floor. So there obviously is there's a proximity effect happening, but still.
Yeah, he wasn't close enough yet.
Wasn't close enough. But I still thought it was awesome that like he stabs him, it's blue, he pulls the sword out, it's not. That's really cool. Certain death. Oh yeah, here's Gimli.
Certainty of death, small chance of success. What are we waiting for?
I was going to do a joke build up and I just forgot because, that was 2.5 hours ago when I thought about the joke. And I was going to say, hey, this is, Sam has just now convinced me to start the podcast and this is what I said.
Certainty of death, small chance of success. What are we waiting for?
Yeah, there you go.
Right?
Yeah. 8.5 years later, we're still at it.
Yep.
I didn't capture the "you bow to no one." I didn't capture that, though. I did like the part when he sees Arwen for the first time, and he takes the banner and just hands it to some lady.
Yeah, he's just like, here, this.
Take this. I'm the king. I'm gonna make out with my future wife. Hold this thing. I did like that scene. I didn't capture that. I captured this though because, I don't know. Like we were talking about story arcs earlier, and Gimli and Legolas, they don't really get a story arc like the other ones because they're already super brave. They're already excellent fighters, and what they do is that they grow closer together as friends.
Yep.
Because this movie is way more about love as a friendship love than man and woman love. I mean, there's a little bit of the she likes him, but he can't love her because he's in love with the elf lady, and then Faramir and her end up together at the end anyway. So she gets a boo, which is fine. But like for the most part, this movie is not about that. It's about dudes being friends and whatever. And I mentioned it in the Fellowship or in the Two Towers episode. I mean, I can't remember which one, but like having read the Silmarillion and learning why dwarves and elves hate each other. I mean, it is bred into them to hate each other. You know, it's Hatfields and McCoys. It's Ohio versus Michigan. Like, you hate the other. And then Legolas is willing to die fighting the Rohirrim because one dude threatened Gimli. And then here they are at the end of the world, and we get this moment.
I thought I'd die fighting side by side with an elf.
What about side by side with a friend? I could do that.
Yeah, it's just so awesome. I love it. I really do.
Yeah.
It's so awesome.
The greatest bromance of all time.
Yeah.
It's Legolas and Gimli.
You know, okay, I need to complain for just a second, and it has nothing to do with this movie. Did you guys ever see when TBS had these movies for a long time, and they edited the commercial promos to make it look like Frodo and Sam was having some kind of romance? Do you guys remember that?
No.
I don't.
God, it was so annoying. I bet you if we YouTubed it, you would find them. TBS or TNT, I can't remember, but they edited these commercials where, because there's a lot of moments where Frodo is just looking at stuff. You know, he's just looking off camera, longingly at something. There's a lot of that. But they edited it so it made it look like Sam and Frodo are looking at each other. And then, I mean,
I get it in some ways. Like, if you cast Elijah Wood and you've got that face and those eyes, you want to take pictures of those. Like, put that on screen because he has impossibly blue eyes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember those trailers, but or those promos, but I could kind of see that because, you know, Sam is kind of, he's both Frodo's friend, but he's also like his, like, you're familiar with the term a Batman in the British military?
No.
They were, so a Batman, or they were also called orderlies, were like the officer's valet or valet, and they were a commissioned officer would have a Batman who basically did everything for him, drove him around if they had a vehicle, acted as a runner, all these kind of things. And that's sort of how that relationship between Frodo and Sam was originally structured, is like Frodo is sort of the officer doing the work, and Sam is his orderly, his Batman.
Interesting.
And I always liked kind of when I learned about that, how that dynamic worked, because it was like a position of a lot of respect and that same kind of like, we've been in war sort of love. Like the Batman would dig the foxhole. He would act as a bodyguard. He would do all these things. He was just with the officer all the time. And that was Sam. Sam is that 100%. So.
Okay.
Huh.
Yeah.
There you go.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah.
It's also kind of, how can I say this without insulting British officers? It seems very lazy on the officer's part. You know, it's like, what exactly are the officers doing that they can't help dig the hole, or they can't drive themselves, or is that just my American?
It's some of that, but it's also like
sensibility?
it's the guy that's there to, like, the officer has orders to give out, so his Batman runs it to the subordinates. He takes the orders. And he's like, all right, let me go deliver those, and the officer can continue on with whatever else he's doing at the time, or, you know, little things like maintaining his uniform, like driving the vehicle. The officer is busy doing his officer duties. He's got somebody to drive him around.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And that's been common for a long time. In fact, my wife's cousin was a driver for a general during Operation Iraqi Freedom. It was just, this is a short version of the story, but basically he was just a private, and some stuff started going down, and he got in the Jeep and saved some people, including this guy, and he was like, "Hey, you're my guy from now on because you saved me," and he promoted him, and then he became like this guy, like his valet, his driver, and then eventually what would happen is that the general was like, "Hey, so here's the deal. I have to either promote you or reassign you, but you can't stay as my guy, as my driver. I have to promote you. And he's like, okay. And he goes, but if I promote you, then you have to technically be my bodyguard. And he goes, what does that mean? He goes, you walk into the room first.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, okay, that's fine. So, but this is a general that's high up enough. He's not going into active shooting scenarios. But
Right.
if he's going into a place where there could be danger, my wife's cousin went in first. And anyway, that was there you go. That's the guy. All right, time for this.
And now for some more bad news. Ready?
Again, this movie has so much trivia. There's no way I could have read half of it. I don't have time. So the three pieces of trivia I found were pretty interesting, and the fourth one made me laugh. I posted it on Twitter already. Basically, it said that Peter Jackson had such a hard time dealing with the Weinsteins that when he gave them, producer credit at the end of the movie, in this movie, at the end, there's like drawings kind of happening in the background. And in particular, this one is a picture of a man with a pike attacking two giant ogres. And that's basically a way of saying his relationship with the Weinsteins. So I screen captured that and threw up on Twitter. So if you want to see that, just go to my Twitter feed @CheapSeatCast and you can see that there. Okay, so here's some trivia. Since John Reese Davies suffered constant rashes from wearing the Gimli makeup, which we all know, the makeup department gave him the opportunity to throw his Gimli mask into the fire on his last day of pickup photography. He didn't hesitate the moment and grab and burn it. So John Reese Davies got to burn the Gimli facial hair and mask.
Love it.
The last shot of principal photography was when the newly crowned Aragorn bows to the four hobbits. Although Viggo Mortensen did not need to be on set for that day, he nevertheless insisted on attending. He didn't have a crown, as it wasn't necessary because he wasn't being filmed, so he made one out of paper, and with each successive take, the crown was becoming more ornate and sillier as the crew members kept decorating it. So the four actors playing the hobbits had difficulty suppressing their giggles.
That's perfect.
I love
There's
that.
so many good moments like that. Another one involving Viggo that I just was reminded of earlier tonight actually was the shot of Sam and Rosie at their wedding.
Yeah.
They were shooting that, and there's a moment where they turn around towards the camera, and Viggo was on set and saw this, and he was like, and he runs off and he grabs Billy Boyd, who was in his trailer, and brings him back out. And so they stood there off camera so that Sean Astin would, and I can't remember the actress name who plays Rosie, would have somebody to look at when they turned around that would be a familiar face instead of just like random crew members. And so they kept doing take after take. And on one of the takes, they throw they throw the bouquet, and you see Billy Boyd catch it, and Viggo just grabs him and just kisses him. And it just got the best reaction out of everybody. He's like, I don't know if that's the take they used, but it was just the heat of the moment.
That's awesome. It makes you kind of like glad to know that these actors know how to have fun and like.
They got along, for God's sake, right?
Well, they had to. They lived together for the 3 movies.
Yeah. What was it? Elijah Wood didn't realize how long he would be in New Zealand when he first was getting ready to go. And he thought it was going to be like a 6-month thing, and it ended up being 18 months straight of being in New Zealand for principal photography.
Wow.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, it is. Speaking of crazy, this was a piece of trivia. I love stuff like this. I just like stuff like this. So facts and numbers about the trilogy. This is for the trilogy. 6 million feet of film was shot during production. 48,000 swords, axes, shields, and makeup prosthetics. 20,602 background actors cast. 19,000 costumes made by the wardrobe department. 10,000 crowd participants at the New Zealand cricket game who made the Ark Army grunts. 2,400 behind-the-scenes crew members at the height of production, 1,600 pairs of prosthetic Hobbit feet were created, 250 horses used in one scene, 180 computer visual effects artists employed, 114 total speaking roles, 100 real locations in New Zealand used for backdrops, 50 tailors, cobblers, designers, and others in the wardrobe department, 30 actors and actresses trained to speak fictional dialects and languages, 7 total years of development for all 3 films.
Yeah, I mean, and it's stuff like that that puts a quantifiable, these quantifiable numbers onto why I tell people these movies are worth watching. Even if you're not a fan of fantasy films, the production value alone and what went into making these movies. If you are at all interested in filmmaking, this is required viewing just to see what can be done, and watch whatever supplemental materials you can too, if you want, because it's fascinating. It's fascinating to watch, the armor. You mentioned all those numbers of like the swords and things that they made, and half of that is real weaponry.
Yeah.
They just weren't sharpened. The story of there was like 2 people that hand did all the chainmail. They would, they had plastic that they would paint, but they hand wove all that chainmail together. And I think it was Richard Taylor was like, yeah, they pretty much, if they wanted to go rob a bank right now, they could, because they have no fingerprints left. They've worn the fingerprints right off their hands.
Wow. Putting
all this chainmail together.
So we should rob a bank.
Well, and you think, the cinematography, the action sets flew in Lord of the Rings so that these battle scenes and things like Game of Thrones can fly as well. They took the ideas from Lord of the Rings and just made them that much better for some of those sequences in future movies that are trying to replicate what a fantasy battle would look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing what went into making these movies, and the fact that the whole world also feels lived in. It's dirty, it's grimy. It's not this like shiny, pristine area. Even the with the exception of like Galadriel, who kind of glows white, right? But she's an elven queen, so that makes sense. But it just everything feels right because they did this perfect mix of all this practical work and all of the costuming and everything else, and then interwove in the right amount of CG at the time. Like the technology was perfect. It was the perfect storm to be able to make these movies and to put them on screen. Yeah. Just love it. I can't say enough about these movies. And we never even talked about music.
Well,
no. Well, that's next week. That's a whole podcast dedicated to Mr. Shore.
Which I can't wait to listen to that, because this is easily one of my, if not my favorite series of film scores to listen to. Like I just put them on all the time. I love Howard Shore's scores.
Well, you should
for these
just
movies.
pull up. You just go to Pandora and type in film scores, and every 4th one will be Howard Shore's music in this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Pandora. It sounds like, it feels like Pandora bought 4 pieces of music. They bought the rights to Harry Potter, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and then about just 7 other just random things from one studio, because I've heard that trombone lick about 10,000 times. So I'm not saying it's not great. I'm just saying I've heard it a lot. But yeah, we have kind of intentionally avoided talking about the film score for the last these 3 episodes specifically because we're going to spend a couple hours next week talking about it with an expert. Though I don't think Eric would like me using that word, but I'm going to. And he did. It was funny. He did listen to our last 2 episodes and said, "I feel bad that you and your guests didn't get to talk about the music because I know that your guests wanted to talk about the music."
Well, I wasn't getting out of here tonight without mentioning it, because it's memorable music. They're movements that I just are like in my brain all the time, and I always hear them, and I never get tired of listening to it, and they fit perfectly. Like that's that icing on the cake. I mentioned how just all the production value that went into this and all the work and all the love that went into making these films. And you see all of that on screen, and then the sound mixing and then the music on top of it. Like everything is just there's no missteps in making these movies.
Yeah.
There really isn't.
This is a kind of a side thing, but here I am. So I'm on Twitter because I'm trying to make sure I have our top 3 categories kind of pulled up here on Twitter, and I'm still getting interaction on our posting. But I put up on yesterday. I put up a poll. I was just curious to see which movie was their favorite. And Travis, I'm going to ask you this because I've asked all of our guests, and Andrew and Sam and I have all said which ones are our favorites. And it just so happened to be, and I'll be really curious to see if this is the same with you, is Cameron, who we had on for the fellowship, that was his favorite one. And then last week, Mark from Digital Dissection, that was his favorite one. So of the 3, which is your favorite?
My favorite is Fellowship.
Okay.
There's something to the start of this adventure that I really, really like. And I think part of it is like, I remember specifically where I was when I found out that they were making these movies. I was in my friend's dorm room at Michigan State University in the fall of 2000. And he had found on some website, hey, they're going to make the Lord of the Rings into a live action movie. And I was like, what? And there was some behind the scenes footage already. And you were seeing Uruk-hai running or it was something from that final battle in Fellowship, and just the effect that had on me. And then seeing that movie in the theater for the first time, each successive one just kept building on that. But that moment of seeing that movie, that stuck with me. So it is my favorite of the 3.
Okay. That's cool. So I mentioned that because I put out a poll on the Twitter and asked people which one was their favorite. And of the 54 votes that we got, we have coming in at 3rd place is The Return of the King at 16.7%. The Fellowship of the Ring comes in at 29%, and The Two Towers at 53%. So I was surprised it was that big of a difference.
Yeah.
That The Two Towers was. I mean, that was. But I think The Two Towers, Sam and I, that's our favorites. Andrew, I can't remember what was yours.
Yep.
Yeah, it's Two Towers.
Two Towers. So it's the 3 of us too. So maybe the 2 of you went out and voted 6 times to skew the numbers. I don't know. Not that you guys are known to have done that in the past. Boy, that was an evil laugh.
I didn't even know it was on Twitter. So
no, that's fine. I know you guys don't live on Twitter like I do. And I am actually having a conversation right now with Jim from Film Rage. He's kind of him and some others are kind of complaining about the ending. I want to go on record and say this. Yes, this movie has 3 endings. Yes, it does take a long time for the movie to destroy Mordor and then or Sauron and then to end. But when we addressed it, I just want to be very clear. Watching it this time, the endings it didn't bother me this time at all.
No.
I think it's okay to take a long time to breathe in the movie and just say, these are characters that we have now spent combined, legit, 12 hours with. It's okay to take 15 extra minutes and say, bye.
Yeah, we get the ending where the Fellowship gets back together for the first time since Moria.
Yeah.
So, there's that moment. We get the hobbits going back to Hobbiton, and then we get Frodo leaving the shores and heading for the Grey Havens, and kind of ending that and passing the torch to Sam so he can go home. It could have been worse. The book has more endings. There's more. It's even more. So it could have been longer. Yes, it's long. There's a lot to end, but you need that in this. And again, like I said earlier, it's kind of in the context of a 3-movie trilogy. It's not just the ending of The Return of the King. It's the ending of this incredibly epic journey that started, 2 movies earlier.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Just if you turn this, because again, it was filmed as one movie. So if you think of this as one 12-hour movie, heck, think of it like this. Think of it as an anthology series. If this was a 10-episode series, right? Then the ending would have been its own episode. But you need that episode to figure out what's going to happen with the characters. I mean, we don't know if we don't need the thing where it says then Sam would go on and grow up and get married and do the thing. Like I don't know. I'm getting some grief on Twitter a little bit about it, but like I think it's okay. It's okay to have this long time to breathe. It's okay, guys. Calm down, Twitter. Jeez. All right. Speaking of Twitter,
excuse me while I whip this out.
Time for our top 3. So if you did participate on Twitter, this will be really interesting for you. So our top 3 category is our top 3 favorite Best Picture winners for the Oscars, the Academy Award for Best Picture. And of all of those movies, of the 58, 60 something movies that have won Best Picture, what are your favorite 3? And therefore, I will start with you, Sam.
All right. Well, we got to go all the way back to 1922. And no, just kidding. Oh. I looked at this thing and I had a hard time choosing between whether I was going to do the Best Picture, as in the best made film, the film that is above all other films, or the best pictures that I enjoy the most, right? And I ended up going with the ones that I enjoy the most and that I could put on the screen or I could put up and watch it pretty much any time. And my number 3 is Silence of the Lambs.
Okay.
Love me some Silence of the Lambs. Great, great work by Angelina Jolie there, and what's his name? Not Christopher Lee.
Don't help him, Travis. Don't help him.
Florence Wishburne.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did real well with those, and really enjoy that movie. It's one of the reasons I got into my psychology degree to begin with. I wanted to be a forensic psychologist. So, is
it killing anybody else out there, or are we just going to let him go with that? Like, is it bothering anybody else? Because it's killing me. But
he nailed it.
Yeah.
Got it. It's perfect.
Yep. All right. So that's my number 3.
Okay.
My number 2 is Forrest Gump, which is one of those that people complain about winning Best Picture because there's some other good ones that year, especially. But Tom Hanks did wonderful in that, and it's just so much fun to watch. My number 1, the music, the story, the Hugh Grant is incredible in Gladiator. So I really enjoy the old sword and sandals epic that portrays. So there you go.
Okay.
My top 3.
Sometimes I can't tell if it's real or not, but it's just fine to just go with it. Oh my God, Hugh Grant. I cannot. Could you imagine Hugh Grant in that role? No one can.
Did I say a name wrong?
That's worse than Sean Connery as Gandalf. It's just okay. Travis.
Oh, well, I had the same kind of thing. Like, am I going to go for the best film that won Best Picture, or am I going to go for what I enjoyed the most? Because it's not necessarily the same thing. And for me, my number 3 is actually Gladiator. I adore that movie. I'm a unabashed Ridley Scott fan. That movie I just love every moment in it. It's super, super good. It was tough with some of these other ones. I mean, things like Unforgiven, Schindler's List is a tough movie to watch.
Yeah,
but it's so good.
Yeah.
It's one of those you have to watch at least once.
Yes.
You have to. It is. It's still on your list of shame, right, John?
No, I watched it.
It's on my list of shame.
Oh, Andrew's list of shame.
Yeah.
I knew it was on one of ours, but yeah.
There's things like The Departed, this movie, Return of the King. But for me, number 2 was No Country for Old Men. That was, it's a downer of a movie, but for some reason I can't help but enjoy it. And honestly, and this is a weird, this is a new thing for me because I only just saw this movie recently. And so there might be a little bit of recency bias going on with this one, but for me, one of the most enjoyable movies I've watched recently is The Apartment from 1960 with Jack Lemmon. And that movie surprised me. It went in places that I didn't expect it to go. And it, for a movie made in 1960, tackled subjects that I wasn't anticipating. And it's so amazingly well done.
And Billy Wilder directed that one.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. He wrote and directed it, and it's just, I can't say enough good things about it. I saw Sunset Boulevard last year for the first time, which is another Billy Wilder movie that just blew me away. But The Apartment, I don't know. I can't put my finger on exactly what it is about The Apartment that affected me the way that it did, but it's great. Now, you ask me this again in a month, my top 3 might change a little bit. But right now, yeah, it's a Gladiator, No Country for Old Men, and then The Apartment.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. I go next because that's the way the things go. Okay. My number 3, I love Forrest Gump. I think Forrest Gump is great. But it's not in my top 3. I don't really know why.
I mean, honestly, we got to say Shawshank should have won.
Shawshank should have won, and I've had arguments with people about Forrest Gump for some reason because it's such a dumb argument. But basically, this woman was making the point that she says that every man thinks Forrest Gump is the greatest film ever made. And I said, not only is it not, but it shouldn't have even won that year.
Yeah.
Right. It's not the best picture made in that year. I mean,
yeah.
Shawshank and Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction. Yeah, both.
Yeah. I would put ahead of that.
And I'm guessing what happened is the voters split. Ended up splitting between the 3 movies, and Forrest Gump just had that much more.
I think maybe Forrest Gump feels like a bigger story, and it was doing technological things that we hadn't seen, like making Richard Nixon, talk again, like things like that. So for what it was kind of groundbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, maybe that was part of it, and just Tom Hanks is great, but
and they took Gary Sinise's legs.
Yeah, they cut him off, and then
Lieutenant Dan, you ain't got their legs.
Just like the space shuttle. All right, so my number 3 is The Hurt Locker. I remember watching this after it won and just being floored at how good it was. And I think half that cast would eventually become MCU guys anyway, which is kind of fun. My number 2, kind of a strange pick, but this is a movie that I've seen probably 10 times because this was a favorite of my mom's, and Mom kind of ran the TV in our house for a long time. So I've seen this movie a bunch, and that's Dances with Wolves.
Oh, I can't watch it.
Yeah.
I can watch it up until they're being driven away. Just the whole.
It's sad.
Not only does his dog dies, and then the horse dies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I can't stand it.
There's a lot of sadness.
I refuse to watch movies where the dog dies.
Yeah.
I just refuse.
No, I get that. I know other people like that. It's such a great story. It's so well made, and Kevin Costner just he killed it on that one. And then my number 1 is Gladiator. I love Gladiator. It's so good. The Hans Zimmer, the swords, Russell Crowe as the lead actor, not whatever the hell Sam said. It's just such a good movie. I love it so much.
Oh, I guess it was. It wasn't Hugh Grant.
No, wasn't Hugh Grant. But
okay.
You're pretty close. They're both white dudes from another country.
They're both English.
Yeah. Is Russell Crowe English?
No.
I was sad. Is he like Australian?
He's got an accent.
Technically, he's a Kiwi, but he was raised in Australia.
Okay, yeah. See, don't get Sam started on accents and where people are from, because according to Sam, Catherine Zeta-Jones is Mexican. So
yeah, she is. I don't understand why you guys can't just accept the fact that she is from Central America. Yeah,
that Central American country called Wales.
Wales, thank you. This has been a thing. I mean, it's been a thing since we didn't we do The Mask of Zorro or something? And when she was in it, I can't remember. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The point is that Sam's wrong. Okay. Andrew.
All right. I'm going to start us off with a little Shakespeare in Love.
That's such a good movie.
As number 3.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
We reviewed
and
it
I
also.
didn't know of it until we reviewed it. I mean, I knew of it. I just hadn't
I
watched
didn't know it was a Best Picture winner, and I also didn't know that Dame Judi Dench won Best Supporting Actress for 7 minutes of screen time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 2, I have The Godfather.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was close to making my list too. There was
Yeah.
My numbers 4 through I think I looked at it. I'd seen like 27 Best Picture winners. My numbers 4 through like 20 were sort of all clumped together.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like it's like trying to cut off like a finger.
Yeah.
Well, just have Gollum bite it off.
Yeah, that'll work.
And number 1 for me, it was tough because I really wanted to say Amadeus, just because I'm a music guy, and Amadeus is a good movie. But there's one that I like better, and a lot of people probably don't like this, but it's The King's Speech.
I love
Oh,
the
that's
King.
so good.
Yeah.
It's so
It's
good.
such a
that's
great
real good
movie.
choice.
It's
So well
it's
written.
one of
It's so well written.
I think Colin Firth is brilliant in that movie.
And
Yes,
then when he
absolutely.
goes and kills a bunch of people in that church, it's so great.
Yeah.
See, I can
honestly,
do it
the
too,
King's-
Sam.
The King's Speech was in that same, like the King's Speech, Amadeus, Rocky, Unforgiven, Schindler's List. Those all like clump right together where it's like, I want to put them all in my top 3.
Yeah.
I only have 3 slots and it's horrible because they're just so good.
Sorry to make life so hard on you, Travis.
It's tough. Ah.
All right. Twitter. Boy, Twitter, you guys are all over it tonight. So I will blame myself for this. This is what I did. I said, can you help us? Let us know your top 3 movies and we'll shout it out on the show. And then underneath it, I wrote top 3 category or top 3 favorite Best Picture winners. So I think what happened is people read, let us know your top 3 movies, we'll shout you out on the show, and then stopped reading.
Yeah.
So our
100%
dear friend, listener, buyer of merchandise, she messages me often on Twitter to let me know about, what I said wrong. And she also sent me a picture of her and Carl Urban, letting me know that we couldn't remember Carl Urban's name. But there's a picture of her and him together. Rosie, again, you're the best, but your 3 were Goonies, The Princess Bride, and While You Were Sleeping, which 2 of those movies will be reviewed before the end of the summer. We've already done While You Were Sleeping. The Princess Bride is on the list.
Good.
It's been requested by a guest upcoming. Cameron from the Green Shirt Podcast, a newbie's trek through TNG, says Return of the King, The Apartment, and Casablanca.
Good choices.
Yeah, thanks, Cam. Here's someone new to our list here. Anime Shoshin. They are at Anime Shoshin Pod. Gladiator, Rocky, and Unforgiven. Jesse from the Sudden But Inevitable podcast says No Country for Old Men, The Departed, and Amadeus. I Screen, You Scream for Movies. That's at ISUS4M, which I'm doing something with him later this month.
Nice.
Ooh, saucy.
He says his top 3 anticipated films is The Batman, Sonic 2, and Top Gun Maverick.
I love how this is just going everywhere.
Eric from the Cinematic Sound Radio podcast, who's on with us next week, says Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Empire Strikes Back, and Back to the Future. And somebody voted with them saying this, this GIF.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ballpark _Frank says The Sting, Silence of the Lambs, and Ben-Hur. And then he said the best, which should have won, is The Adventures of Robin Hood.
Okay.
Yeah. And then our good friend V from Life Paranormal with V, she just sent me a gif of the potatoes. So, oh no, it says pote-owned. Nice. It says pote-owned. Okay.
Nice.
And then lastly, the Wheel of Horror podcast at Wheel of Horror Wheel, excuse me. They gave me Underworld, The Matrix, and The Revenge of the Sith. To which I then said, did any of those win Best Picture? And they said the Justin Best Picture. So there you go. Thank you all for participating. That was lovely. I do appreciate it.
I blame Sean.
It is my fault. It is 100%.
I do. See, I took your tweet and I retweeted it and put right up front your top 3 Best Picture winners, and I got one response.
Oh yeah, good.
Which is from Phil Rude, who said Unforgiven is number 1, hands down. After that, almost anything that won in the 70s can fight for my second and third spots.
Nice. Nice. Great. All right. Well, again, thank you, Twitter, for that. And again, it is my fault, not yours. Shoot the Flick did say Return of the King is great until ending 3, and that's where we kind of got into a thing there. But that's fine. Okay. Time for this.
Wait, what's supposed to happen?
This is where we give this movie a score from 0 to 10, and we would do that now. And Andrew goes first.
Well, I have to say that this is, like I said, a great conclusion to the trilogy. But the movie itself, if I'm looking at it just by itself, I don't think I can score it as high as the last one. So I'm going to say, still going to give it a nice score, though. I'm going to give it a good 8.95.
That's exactly what you gave the Fellowship of the Ring, just so you know.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
They can tie.
That's fine. Just letting you know. Travis.
I'm getting this one is a 9 out of 10. Okay. It's just fantastic. It's hard for me to say anything is a 10 out of 10, although if I was to combine all 3 movies, it would be a 10 out of 10.
That's fair. That's fair.
Easily.
Yeah. Sam.
9.08 out of 10.
All right. I like it.
It's beautiful. It's a perfect, almost perfect movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So as we sit here at 2 hours into the recording, I feel kind of weird that we didn't mention anything about the Ghosts Army and how awesome that was. And, anything about, there was the trope of the guy says, you and what army? And Aragorn says this army. And then 1,000 ghosts come in and killed all the guys. That was really awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Or, just how awesome.
We would literally be sitting here all night if we were going to talk about every cool component of this movie.
I know, you're right. And you're right. And I didn't really want to do that. I do kind of like sometimes when we just organically talk about good and the bad and the whatever, because I don't really think, honestly, the only thing that we didn't really nitpick this movie at all. I
had the nitpick about I Am No Man.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and that's
a little bit. And I will say, Stewart guy, he was on the verge of overacting in a few spots. Like he was so close to being over the top.
It never bothered me because I felt like he was on the verge of losing his sanity at any moment. So I felt like that was okay if he overacted a little bit. If you gave us, because mostly he's like subtly angry acting. Like the whole time.
And there is like some undertones of, and they don't really explore it at all, where he might have a Palantir. And so how much of his actions are influenced by Sauron and Saruman.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And kind of poisoning him a little bit in that way. So like, I get what you're saying. He does get right to the edge. He kind of steps up to the line, but he never goes across.
No,
he never goes over.
Yeah, until he's on fire. There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Then he runs. He runs 2 football fields and then
he ran a long way. There were plenty of places he could have jumped off, but anyway.
Nope, he's going to all the way to the end.
Yeah, I mean, like the bridge to get to the place where they do the burying is, again, a bridge with no railings. He could have jumped off there, but it wasn't nearly as cinematically pretty. So. Okay. I gave Fellowship a 9. I gave Two Towers a 9.5. I'm going to give this right in the middle of both a 9.25, not a 2.25. 9.25. Because I like this one a little bit better than Fellowship, I think. But they're all great. They're all great. I mean, they're just great films. They're amazing. I'm so glad we did this, on the anniversary of the Fellowship 20 years ago. These movies are 20 years old, guys. I mean, and they just hold up. I mean, Andy Serkis in this movie is so good. We didn't really get a chance to talk much about Gollum and his, going mad portrayal and all that stuff, and how awesome Shelob was, and the fact that Peter Jackson is scared of spiders, and so therefore he designed Shelob to look like all of the scary things that spiders are to him.
Yeah, I do not like spiders, and so that's a tough scene for me to watch.
Sure.
I'm with Peter Jackson on that, but it's so amazingly done.
My
Such
wife,
a great.
Yeah, she just buries her head in a blanket. She couldn't see it. She can't do it. She basically says, "Just let me know when she's off the screen." So she has never seen Sam wound Shelob. She's never seen any of that scene because she can't do it. She just can't do it. It'll give her nightmares for weeks. So that gives us a round score of 9.07. So giving the series Fellowship at a 9.235, Two Towers at a 9.25, and this movie a 9.07. So Cameron kind of skewed the thing a bit when he gave it a Fellowship a 10. But that's okay. And those three movies now will move directly into spots, I think, like 3, 4, and 5 of our movies that we've done for the podcast. And I think that is very much okay. Travis, please tell our listeners where we can find more of you. And please, please, please tell our listeners how they can find the episode that the three of us are going to be on. Because we're going to be on an episode of yours.
Yeah, so you can find me. I'm on Twitter at TVS Travis, and also tvstravis.com is where you can find my show, Wait You Haven't Seen, which is where I have guests on, and we watch a movie at least one of us has never seen before. And the three of you are coming on this weekend. We're going to be recording. None of you have seen it yet. Nobody?
Correct.
Nobody?
None of us had seen it.
Yeah, so it's not only the newest movie by release date that I've covered on the show, but it's also one where all four of us are seeing it for the first time, and I'm excited. That's going to be fun. So that is going to be live streaming Sunday night at twitch.tv/tvstravis 8 p.m. Eastern time, and then it will be out as a podcast a couple of days later at tvstravis.com, and you can get those anywhere you get podcasts. So I do that show. I do a show on Highlander with a friend of mine, Audie. We go through episode by episode of Highlander the series. We're in the middle of season 4 now, and we have a ton of fun with that too. So, and I'm also on a horror movie podcast now called Gore.
With
Monica.
Yeah.
Monica Stone, who was in season 1 of ANTP, and a couple of our friends. We talk about horror movies every week. I've watched some bad stuff, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Some really bad stuff. But I also got to watch The Conjuring finally.
Oh, yeah, we did that.
Holy crap, is that good?
Yeah.
That movie, those first 2 Conjuring movies are fantastic.
Yeah, we did those 2 recently. Those are really good. Yeah. So I'm going to wrap us up here. I think we lost Sam for the night, which is fine. But you said 4 letters that people on my show don't know what means. ANTP. Please tell people what that means.
So ANTP is America's Next Top Podcaster, and it is a podcasting competition show in the vein of a not The Voice, but like basically we get. I was on season 2. There's 12 contestants, and every week is a new challenge, and you have to come up with on the spot kind of podcasts. They are starting recording of the 4th season soon, and it is an amazing experience, and also just really cool to see podcasters who maybe are just starting out, some people that have been doing it for several years. There's great coaching involved in it. It's put on by Brian Ibbett, from the Morning Stream. Scott Johnson from the Morning Stream is a judge, along with Jenny Josephson and Justin Robert Young. Hammond Chamberlain, who does all the production behind the scenes. Everybody involved in it is awesome, and it was honestly doing that competition is what's still got me podcasting right now. Like that opened up so much for me and just kept the joy of doing this. It was hard. It was not an easy thing to do, but it made me a better podcaster. And you can get that at americasnexttop.podcaster.com. There's 3 seasons worth to go through, and season 4 will be starting up soon.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, thanks for that little promo there, which allows me to simply say I am going to be a contestant on season 4.
Well, look at that.
How about
That's awesome.
So, Travis, you said, hey, you should try out. I said no, and you said yes, and so I said fine, and here I am. So I am going to be one of the contestants on season 4. I am terrified. I don't want Justin Robert Young to yell at me, but it's going to happen at some point. So anyway.
He's going to yell at you. Somebody's going to get salty for getting kicked off the show, and it's just the way that it goes. But honestly, it is an amazing experience. You're going to have a great time. It's going to be stressful as all hell, and it's not easy. Although I have talked to a few people, they are trying to help kind of cushion the landing a little bit of like starting it.
Yeah. I've read the rules for this season. It's a little different, but that's fine. Anyway. That's so. I wanted to.
Did you not have to sign a non-disclosure?
Well, kind of, yes, but I'm actually past that point. I'm allowed to talk about it now.
Okay.
Yeah, I am allowed. I was actually allowed to talk about it about 3 days ago, but I wanted to wait until this episode so that I could share with you, Travis, and others. So, yes, that's happening. So that also means is that I'm still going to find time to do this show. I just don't know how. Anyway, that all being said, it's time to go. This show is now has 16 endings, just like the movie, and that's okay. Travis, thank you so much for participating and being on the podcast again. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed our conversation. And
I did too. Thank you so much for having me. Apparently it's my thing to come on here and do like 2-hour plus podcasts. So.
Well, all the other
I'm 2 for 2.
Yeah, the other 2 that we did in this series were also 2-hour plus episodes. They have to be. There's so much to talk about on these movies. Yeah. We have to just take our time and do it. And so if people don't like that, that's fine. We'll go from there. Next week's I'm sure will be, I don't know, shorter, longer, I have no idea. So, on behalf of Andrew, Travis, and Sam, this is Sean saying thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week for the music of Howard Shore.
This is Cheap Seat Reviews.